All information given in this episode is for educational purposes and should not be tried prior to consulting a licensed physician and or certified state or accrediting bodies. We encourage all listeners to research, talk, and make all inquiries to all of the important professionals and governing bodies before acting on any information heard on the De La Fit podcast. Any action taken by any listener is done by and under their own omission and action, whether conscious to the results positive or not.
Tuned in to the De La Fit podcasts, 360 degrees of holistic fitness and health, all in one podcast.
Salutations and proclamations. It is I, it is you, it is us, it is we. Together we make up the digital family that is the De La Fit podcast. I'm your host, Philly's #1 son, aka the body alchemist Sun Moon Bay, bringing you another podcast excursion. Welcome everybody back to the 360 degrees of holistic fitness and health that is the De La Fit podcast. Today we have what I believe to be an excellent podcast that is touching on some of the issues and problems that we have been dealing with within the past 6 months. We've been dealing with the issue of COVID-19 and the emotional nature of loss and the difficulties we've been dealing with when it comes to dealing with pandemic life. And then we are thrust back into the situation of cultural prejudice, some would say racism, and the difficulties that are going on within the United States at this time in the Western world and many more places. Today we will be talking about how to emotionally heal. The subject is supposed to be post-pandemic, pardon me, but because we record previous to certain events and situations, this interview is mainly focused about COVID-19 and just, I won't say mainly, but it deals with COVID-19 and coronavirus. But I feel that the majority of the conversation can be applied to what we are dealing with as a country right now. And what we're dealing with is we're dealing with an untruth and an inequality. We're dealing with extreme emotions and frustration and anger. We're dealing with a lot right now. If you don't give me a second, it's a little hot in the studio. I'm going to shut this window. Typically, I would edit this out, but because we're dealing with such truths at this moment, I think that a little bit of just that fourth wall can be pushed down, and we don't have to pretend that there's that I'm in a quiet studio right now. There's so much going on. There's so much pain that is out there right now, and we have to deal with it, and we have to deal with it in a very truthful way. We have to peel back the layers of what is going on with the deaths of many people of African descent and origin in the United States. It is an unparalleled feeling. It's a frustrating feeling, and what we're dealing with is that frustration, that anger, that misunderstanding. No, I won't say misunderstanding, that trying to understand. So we are blessed today to have Cherie Burton. Cherie Burton, like I said before, she was called in and she agreed to do the interview, and she's a lovely individual, and she sat down with us to have this conversation about healing, emotional healing. And Cherie brings about a very mindful and poignant viewpoint where it comes to healing emotionally. She has in herself dealt with healing and depression and many forms of mental struggle, which put her in a position to look deep, ask questions, and find out what could she do for herself, what she knew would be able to help not only herself but her family and others. And that's what she has dedicated her life to. Cherie is a pioneering spiritual psychologist whose evolutionary speak shine method transforms women into authentically embodied and empowered feminine leaders. I find that Cherie's methods work for both men and women, work for all of us. I'll say that it's totally inclusive. And I am so glad that she was able to join us for this interview. I will be having future guests on to speak on the current situation that is going on across the country, but I wanted to address this in this podcast, which is going live today, and to just say something about it. Say that I've said this before. 2020 is the year of clarity. It's the year of clear-eyed. It's the year of true vision. When you're waking up from a long nap, from a night's sleep or whatever, I don't know about you, but some of us, our eyes are a little cloudy. You might have a little mucus in the corner of your eye, and, you got to wipe it out. Sometimes you wake up, your eyes, if you have allergies or whatever, conditions, it might sting a little. You might wear glasses and everything is fuzzy. Everything is difficult. It's really hard. In the beginning, you're like, I want to see. When that vision becomes clear and you start to see what's going on, you're like, wow. Sometimes some of us, we go to sleep in situations and we wake up and we're like, how the hell did we get here? That's the situation that we are all in right now as a country. Waking up. The giant is waking up. The people are waking up, and what they're seeing they don't like, and they're asking the true questions. What needs to be done? What needs to be done to make things right? With that being said, conversations like the one we're about to have with Cherie Burton, dealing with emotional healing, is one of those conversations. So without further ado, I would like to bring on this interview, and I hope this is helpful for many of you out there who are listening today. Thank you. De La Fit Podcast is sponsored by Mountain Made CBD. Mountain Made is changing the CBD game by offering a line of high-dose CBD tablets at an affordable price. Their products are THC-free and third-party tested for accuracy, cleanliness, and potency. Their products, which ship nationwide, include Build for CBD saturation, Boost for precision titration, Recovery for rest and rehab. With 9 years experience in hemp and fitness, Mountain Made's founders are focused on creating a quality product to help those who live an activated lifestyle. Check out www.mountainmade.life to find out more about how their products can help you crush life. Remember, their products ship nationwide. Go check out their website today and follow them on social media at MNTMADE. I started using Mountain Made's Build CBD tablets to help me with the injury in my elbow. And let me tell you something. Not only is the injury subsided, but now I can do push-ups and I'm back to bench pressing. So I encourage anybody who's interested to look up, check out Mountain Made and all their products. I think you'll be glad you did. What's going on, everybody? It's Philly's #1 son. Listen, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free.
There's a creation tool that allows you how to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a stunning podcast in one place. So listen, if you want to be like me and have your own podcast, go to anchor.com. That's anchor.com.
You're now tuned in to the De La Fit podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the 360 degrees of holistic fitness and health that is the De La Fit podcast. You know, there's so much that continues to take place out there in the world, and a lot of things that are, well, frankly, they're scarring to many of us. We have so many different emotions and so many different things that we deal with. I know when 9/11 took place, for many individuals, it was that healing process, which is why we are thinking about the topic today of healing our emotions after COVID. I mean, what's it going to be like when we move forward? I'm sure there's going to be a plethora of different changes. I'm sure there's going to be individuals that are going to be a little bit hesitant about being around people. I'm sure there's going to be so much that we're going to have to adapt to. Here to have that conversation with us and to give us some perspective of how we can begin to heal ourselves is Cherie Burton. Cherie is a spiritual psychologist, author, international speaker, and host of the Women Seeking Wholeness podcast. And last, but is certainly not least, she is the mother of 6. So you know she has some excellent perspective when it comes to this. Cherie, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you.
Let's get into it. Before we start the topic, healing our emotions after COVID, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I think the introduction that you have, I mean, you're a mother of 6, so 100%, I know you know the world. So tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak about what I'm passionate about. And I think everyone has a story, right? You could be interviewing, and you probably know this as a podcaster. I do a podcast too, but like you could interview anyone and they would have the most compelling story, right? Everyone's walked through stuff. Everyone's been through trauma. And so I am grateful now for the things I walked through that were hard. But when I was going through them, obviously they seemed insurmountable and hopeless. I do have 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls, ages 5 to 25.
Okay.
But that in and of itself, we could be here all day in drama stories. But the biggest thing is my family of origin. I am the second oldest of 7 children. And of all 7 children, myself and one other sibling are the only ones not diagnosed bipolar.
Oh, wow.
And so okay. I got into the field of psychology like right away. And I was determined to get answers. My dad's sister committed suicide at age 32. And in her suicide letter, she asked my parents to raise her 3-year-old son. So that's how my parents got the 7th child. During the time I was getting my psych degree, I was visiting my sisters in psychiatric hospitals. And my mother herself was in bed with depression for many years. So it became, I always tell people, like, your mess is your message. So whatever you've walked through that's been difficult is for a purpose, for a greater plan, for something that you may think is holding you back is actually a stepping stone to get you to your life purpose.
Your mess is your message. I like that. I find that very potent.
Yeah, I actually have it right on my website because I believe in it so strongly. Well, my 2 sisters that I'm really close to, one's a year older, one's 2 years younger. We did everything together growing up. We were the 3 musketeers, and to see them in psychiatric facilities on and off in our 20s was devastating. And what it culminated in for me, I would say, is probably the most painful thing was my sister 2 years younger. We lived in the same community. We were raising our kids together. We were besties. She actually overdosed. She went to a hotel, wrote a letter, and left behind 5 children. And in her suicide letter, she basically said, I can be a better guardian angel than I can be a mom. I just can't do it. I can't do it. So that was actually 15 years ago. And a lot has healed since then, but it's still really hard to talk about because her death influenced everything that I'm doing now. I was really in traditional stuff like I was basically a clinical therapist, a group therapist at a psychiatric hospital. I worked in an addiction recovery center, and I just started to notice people weren't really getting well. And then my sister takes her life, and it was like, what are we doing wrong here? We're really not. I saw a lot of relapsing, and I saw a lot of recidivism. I saw people just really, it made me look at really the whole body, the whole picture, the whole, mind, body, spirit. So I really climbed into that, and it's made all the difference. I can honestly say that our family patterns are breaking because I'm looking at my children going, hey, if all my siblings are bipolar, I'm carrying something here to pass on to my children. I don't think so. I do not think so. I mean,
Right.
My mama bear chemistry was like, it stops here. I need tools. I need something more. So that's basically my story. I walked through a lot of loss, and there's more to the story that we could go into, but those are the highlights. And again, it came through a lot of grief and searching and pining for answers. And my whole purpose in life has been to crack the code on depression. And I do believe, Sun Moon, that I have largely been able to do that. That's a bold statement, but I'm standing by it.
First of all, that's an amazing story. It's a powerful story. And I'm thinking about, again, your statement, which is your message. It's very true. And I think it's simplistic in nature, but I think it's very powerful in nature. So you're saying you've cracked the code as one that has dealt with depression and relatives who have dealt with depression at times. Let's get into it. First of all, how do we actually begin this healing process?
Mm-hmm. Especially during this time of COVID, because we're in an era now on the planet where things will never be the same.
Very
in
true.
A good way and in not so good ways. But the good part of it that I see is that if you have a purpose to help people, now is the time. Do not put it off. Step into your work, and your soul will lead you to that. As far as depression, I see that as the second wave of the pandemic. The first wave was physical. The second wave is emotional.
Right.
And people are now going to be suffering with job loss. Maybe they've lost a loved one to the disease or whatever this thing is. And maybe they just are suffering with anxiety and the unknown. And depression and anxiety are on the same spectrum. They're the same thing. Depression is more about woulda, shoulda, coulda, living in the past, ruminating on the past. Anxiety is more about worrying about the future, what might happen. Both of them are an illusion. We can't change the past. We can't change the future. All we can do is live in the now. So when I help people, that's where I start with people with depression, is what can you do right now? You have no control over anything but this moment. And so what can you do first and foremost to serve your body in this moment and your soul in this moment? And everything that we do is in creation is just a bunch of moments like lumped together, right?
Very true.
So that's where I start with people. And then the second thing I look at is nutrition. Sounds like you're on that same path too.
Oh, yeah.
If people are lacking in essential fats or trace minerals, or if their biochemistry is not being fed, they will feel disconnected from their bodies. They will have foggy thinking. They will have a gut-brain imbalance. So that's very crucial. And the next thing is water. this is a crucial part to, like if we look at the earth as our model for how to be well, the earth is about 65 to 70% water. So are our bodies.
Very true.
The earth needs sun. We do. We can't turn on our axis. Like we can't revolve without it, really. We can't be grounded without the sun. And so nature is a big part of feeding ourselves to combat a lot of these things, anxiety and depression. So drinking water, I just tell people, just always have water with you at all times. Don't leave your house without it. Don't sit at your desk without it. I just say, keep it so simple, right? Breath, breathing right, getting in nature, drinking water, and feeding your body whole foods. So once those lifestyle parameters are put in place, give yourself some compassion. And that alone can combat so much negative bombardment that we're facing in our mental space.
Why is it so, not to cut you off, but Cherie, why is it so difficult? And I found this even within myself. And I've talked to other guests who have come on, and they have said something similar about the compassion. Why is it so hard for us to be empathetic and compassionate with ourselves?
Yeah, that is the age-old question right there. Because if everyone could model self-compassion to others, we would have a different world. And we are our own worst critic at all times.
Yes, very much.
Crazy. It's a practice. It takes practice. It takes mindfulness. It takes catching yourself when you're doing that. The reason it's so hard is we've been programmed to be negative. We've been programmed from the time we were little to basically doubt ourselves, second guess ourselves, compare ourselves. We have this, especially for women, I would say, this ideal standard in our head of what the perfect mother, wife, daughter, sister, friend should be. And that person does not exist. Mm-hmm. So it's harder to, there's this concept of radical self-forgiveness, radical self-compassion. I love that. I'm trying to practice it myself daily. For me, that keeps it away. It keeps the dark cloud away, if you will. I don't have bipolar and I don't have clinical depression, but I cycle through something called dysthymia, which is a low-grade chronic depression. It's kind of like a little bit of melancholy or feeling low energy. So I have to consciously, it's just what I inherited, right? So I have to consciously do things to bring my energy up. And that, I have a friend who, she has to do the same. She sings in the shower. She forces herself to sing in the shower every morning, like at the top of her lungs. Okay. I personally will set a timer on my phone to go outside, like, because I get so busy during the day and I'm like, there's so much to do. To go outside and just sit in the sun for like 10 minutes and take in the rays of the sun and breathe. And that alone, it's such a simple thing, but it brings in the compassion. It brings in my connection to Earth, to the cosmos. Also,
not to mention that vitamin D, which is critical.
Vitamin D, absolutely. And even if the weather is bad, you can find the sun somewhere. So sit by the window and just find the sun. So those little things. But I think, for people who are purpose driven or they're high achievers or they're over, they're super compassionate about what's happening in the world, they can take on the energy around them and get so, like, I'm telling people right now, like, turn off the news. Just, have maybe catch the highlights or something, but like, you can go a whole week and be completely okay with not knowing what's happening.
That's true.
It's not, you're not going to die and your loved ones are not going to die. Like, where we are dying is emotionally because we are in fear. And when your body is in a fear response, it shuts down.
Hey everyone, we hope that you're enjoying the interview thus far.
we'd just like to take some quick time out to remind everybody to like, follow, share, and subscribe. With every like, follow, share, and subscription, it helps the Daylight Fit podcast to grow. And the more we grow, the more information we can bring to you, the listener. So please, take some time out, like, follow, share, and subscribe. Thank you.
Your cortisol levels go up. You go into fight, flight, or freeze. You can't think. You don't have mental clarity. You have low energy, etc. So A Course in Miracles is something that I've been studying for quite some time. And The Course in Miracles says that there are really only two ways of being: fear and love. That's it. It's that simple. And when we feel like we are separate from love, we will go to fear as a natural extension of that panic, like literal panic. So fear in the body looks like depression, looks like anxiety, it looks like low energy, it looks like disconnection from others, isolation. And so my whole work is bringing people back to wholeness inside themselves, finding love within. We could even look at the Bible. Jesus said, kingdom of God is within you. It's not out. It's not something that you're trying to look at or find outside of you. It's within. So I teach a process for helping people go within so that they feel connected. Because if you feel connected, you feel love. And if you feel love, you feel whole. And therefore you don't label yourself depressed or less than or any of those things.
No, I agree. And I want to ask you this before I go on to another question, but it's interesting. I think you took a passage out of the Bible, and I know there's many passages in the Quran and many other religious books. There seems to be a pattern and a similarity with all of the world's religions. It seems that there's so much mindfulness being taught within it. How did we get away from that? Fear. Religions propagate fear. That's it. Like, I consider myself kind of an omnist. I find truth in many religions. I don't think there's just one way. But what I have detached from are the fear-based tactics of religion, because they promote, they say they're promoting love, but it's, you're going to go to hell. You're going to be separated from God. You're a sinner. None of that propagates a love response in the body. So it's confusing when you sit in church and you're being told, God loves you. You are love. You are God. You're part of God. You're a child of God. But you're such a low life sinner, and I'm totally exaggerating, but no, totally
it's
understood.
A paradox that people can't reconcile, and so they go into a fear response, and they go out of duty.
Now, for our listening audience, again, I just want you all to understand we're not coming down. Neither myself nor the guests are coming down any religion, but if you follow me with my next mode of questioning, I think you're going to see where I'm going with this, which I find interesting. Now, Cherie, this is one thing and this is just my theory, strictly me and everyone listening. I feel like we have gotten away from quote unquote practicing the truth of religion or religion in truth, and we practice more politics. And the reason I'm saying that, and this is just, I have what I like to call my zone out nerd moments where I'm just sitting there and I'm thinking of things. And I find that when you look at how politics is as we know it today, and then you take that and find what religion is supposed to be and and how it's taught to most of us truthfully, or I should say like the passage that you just read, I find that the two are directly opposed to each other, but they mirror each other, almost like like right and wrong are close to each other. You know, like left and right have to be close to each other. I feel like more of us have been introduced to the political nature of things instead of the true religious. And this is just something I'm shooting out, and I'm just curious as to what you may think of that.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I would agree with you. I think God is very nuanced. I don't think that there's just this absolute good, bad, right, wrong, black, white thing going on. I think everyone, if someone could walk in your shoes, they wouldn't judge it. We just got to take the judgment out of it. To me, that feels aligned with, hey, I don't see the whole picture, so I'm not going to judge you. I don't know. Going back to your message, right? We don't know what people have been through.
Exactly.
And so it feels more peaceful and compassionate to just throw out the rules in terms of, if you don't do this, this is going to happen. That's just, you can't say that to someone in trauma. Like my sister, there are many people that believe that if someone completes suicide, they're not going to go to a happy place in the next life. And I believe that we have a very compassionate creator. And I believe there's a lot of feminine. I have a whole kind of side hobby of researching the divine feminine and all the ancient goddess stuff that has been written out of history, right? There's just so much we don't know, I guess is what I'm saying. We don't know. It's a mystery. And so why are we being so absolutist when everything's just such a mystery?
I love what you're saying. I feel the same way, but slightly different in the fact of, I feel like we don't, but we do know. And we're, like you said before, we're taught not to pay attention to ourselves. So therefore, the things we're naturally like, you know, that empathy for one another, we're like, no, you got, this is Philadelphia, or this is whatever city, America, or wherever we are, you know, it's gritty. You got to be a shell and hold, you know, those are the things we're taught. I thank you for allowing me to ask you that question. This was a total side question.
Well, but it wasn't, though, because there's so many people who are depressed because they don't feel like they're being enough spiritually.
Very true. Very true. Which is a good segue for, why is it so difficult for us to move on from our issues of pain, trauma, and disappointment? I mean, from what you're saying, it makes so much sense. Why can't we just take those tools and just be like, I'm free? Why? What is it that's going on?
I know. You have to give that to yourself. No one can grant that. And the more that because I love a lot of the Buddhist mindfulness practices, like you are that which you seek. It is in you. And so most of us spend our whole lives chasing something outside of us when we miss the boat. All along, it was within us. And Jesus taught that. So did the Buddha. You know, and I'm sure if we could climb into Hindu texts and all of the major world religions, we would find some gem in there about God within. That's very true. It doesn't negate that there is a higher power outside of us too. But what's in us is so powerfully connected to that we lose sight of it. We get bogged down in the world, and we kind of miss the boat of just finding the source within.
You know, there's an old Moorish saying. My family's Moroccan, so and I'm Muslim, and there's an old saying that Allah and man are one. So I just wanted to add into that. There you go.
See, it's in Muslim too.
You know,
it's as old as time, this concept. But as I say, I'm more of an omnist because I see beauty in all of the major world religions. And I don't believe that there's anything that would keep us from a loving creator in the afterlife or whatever. We are the ones judging ourselves the harshest.
True.
And so for us to feel mentally well, we have to detach from those black, white, dogmatic, good, you're either good or you're bad. There's no in between, right? That's the messaging we're getting, and it's just very damaging. And it's not just in, religion, because it isn't the religion itself. It's the teachers inside of it who are projecting their own stuff.
Right, right.
Because I could go in the same religion, I could go to a different congregation that holds the same beliefs and get a whole different experience because it's the person who's teaching and preaching that's bringing in their own worldview and how they feel about themselves. So,
and that is that is a very interesting concept. I remember I was always told that it's a personal way. It's a personal way, something that my uncles used to always tell me. It's like, Islam is personal. It's personal to, who you are and what it is that you're doing. But we're supposed to, as human beings, always constantly be revisiting ourselves and striving to be rid of our faults and errors that we know, because there's always a development. There's always, growth, but for example, I don't like how I'm late. So I have to work on that. You know what I mean? And I work that very hard,
Yeah.
So.
We get into this, like, I understand. I have my list of things that I'm like, I wish I would do this differently.
Right. Right.
That self-acceptance is so huge, and it comes back to the now, right? All we have is the now.
Very true.
And our own knowing is all we have.
What does it really take to heal our stuck emotions? I know we've been talking about, but give us another tip that could help us come out of this.
Yeah, I literally only have 1 more minute, so I'll make this really brief. So for me, I have a mantra that I use when I'm triggered, and it's stop, breathe, receive. So I stop everything that I'm doing. I separate myself from the situation. I close my eyes and I breathe. I love to grab essential oil or something to really ground my senses. I maybe put on some music. I actually have on my website, I have a kind of a lookbook or a healing kit that people can download free that will walk them through how to work through triggers and how to nourish and find self-compassion. And I actually have a meditation on there as well. But that's my biggest go-to is do what you need to do in the moment. Don't delay. Don't stuff it. Don't move forward until you've dealt with that emotion. So stop, breathe, and receive is my mantra. My website, if it's okay to share, to get that free.
Please do.
Okay, it's standspeakshine.com. Like you're standing in who you are, you're speaking out your truth, and you're shining in it. standspeakshine.com. And so you can find my free healing kit there, and people can just download that, and I'll just walk them through some yummy ways to nourish themselves, male or female. It's more, I guess, branded to women, but certainly men would benefit by everything in there. And it's just important we nourish our own souls. No one else is going to do that for us.
Well, Cherie, I want to thank you for coming on to the show and helping us with this topic. I know so many people are going to take this useful information, and we want to try to have you back for our next, or I should say a future show dealing with our feminine leadership and the energy about the truth about feminine energy and its strength. So if we can get you to come back for that, I would
love to. That's another passion of mine.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We will be back in just a moment. Hey, you, with the earbuds in their ear. Have you ever wanted to start your own podcast? When I was trying to get my podcast off the ground, I had a lot of questions. How do I record an episode? How do I get my show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other places people like to listen? How do I make money from my podcast? The answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now Anchor can match you with great sponsors too, so you can get paid to podcast. I like to upload my episodes directly to the app and then promote. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast, make money doing it. Go to anchor.fm/start to join me in the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast. I just want to take the time out to thank Cherie for coming on to the podcast and sharing that very meaningful message, that very meaningful information, and to say that with these tools, these tips that she was able to give us, these tips can be used throughout life for many different situations. Many of the tools and tips that individuals have come to the show and left us with are not tools just for one scenario, one situation. Many of the tools that we have been taught down through the line from many different prophets, from many different spirits who have come here and embrace their vision of helping humanity. They have given us tools and tips that can help. We have to start paying attention to those tools and tips. We have to start using them. I think that's one of the things we have to remind ourselves is that we tend to forget and put ourselves in the position of now and in the past. Again, I say that this is 2020. It's the year of clarity. 2020 vision. See it for what it is. Now the decision is, what are we going to do about it? Do we stop it or do we complain about it? Do we practice the definition of insanity, being that we continue to do something expecting something to change, or do we change as human beings? Do we understand and be empathetic to one another? Do we actually see what is going on in the world? Do we move or push the negativity out of our lives? Do we start to open our eyes and see that no, it's not just a them, us, it's a those that have their own agenda, whether they look like us or not, who want to prosper? And then we start to address those individuals and then say, no, we need to work together. We need to unify. We need to understand. We need to heal. And we need to deal with these real emotions and deal with our history, our past, and then grow. That's what it's coming to, brothers and sisters. And I'm not saying that just for the fact of saying it. I'm not saying it as a person who's just of African descent or Afro-Caribbean descent. I'm saying it as a person who is a human being and who knows that my brothers and sisters are human beings. Makes no difference where you come from. If you act human, you are my brother and sister. Now this is my belief. There are actions to human beings. There are legitimate actions. Now, some people may disagree. That is so good. You can disagree. That's one of the abilities that we all share as individuals. We have the ability to disagree. But that is my belief. There are things that make us human, and there are things that do not make us human. That is my belief. That's my sole belief. Solely me. but I'm speaking for the actions and the feelings of people who are acting human. Humans are compassionate people. Human beings can be negative, but the positives, we all have the ability to be positive and to grow positively. And maybe I'm speaking somewhat frustratedly. I'm not going to lie, there is somewhat a frustration because I do believe in the finer points, the higher points that human beings can raise themselves to function under. I feel like many of us take and I want people to understand this. I feel that many of us take a knee where it comes to being the best we can be in our humanity. And I think that the time for us to stand up and be our best is now. That's my opinion. I don't know what your opinion is out there. I would love for you to share it. As always, you can always hit us up at our email, which is delafit13@gmail.com. We are on Facebook at De La Fit Podcast. We are on Twitter at De La Fit Podcast. We are on Instagram at DE_LA_Fit Podcast. So I would love to hear from many of you. Also, if you are on Anchor, you can leave a voice message. I would love to hear from many of you out there, to hear what your thoughts are on this process, to hear where we're at right now. I would love to hear it. Share that voice. As I've always said, we are the village. We are the village. It takes a village to raise a child, and we are the village. Each one teach one. Which means if we're all the village, then that means we are related in some type of way. Which means we have to start learning to work together as a human family. In the human family, we have to learn to get along. We have to learn to respect each other. We don't always have to like each other. That is the 100% truth. We don't have to always like each other. We don't always have to like what somebody else does. We don't always have to agree, but we 100% as people, as human beings, need to learn to respect and need to learn to understand that individuality and understand that, you know what, I may not like what that person does, but I respect them as a human being, and I'm going to respect the fact of my humanity and do what's necessary. This makes no difference of what your cultural background is. And honestly, we need to get rid of so much other fluff and manure and crap that we are putting on each other to separate. When we start dealing with the truths of ourselves, then we will actually begin to grow. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking with that. And I hope to hear from you all soon. All right, everybody, have a great weekend. Please treat yourself the best you can. I know if you're going to treat yourself the best way, as honestly and loving as you can, that you're definitely going to try to treat others that way, because you know how to treat yourself. All right. Have a great day. Peace.
You've been listening to the De La Fit podcast. Ta-ta for now.